Hello, my name is Ryan Carney, and I'm going to be going over how to use arrays in Java. So I made a little slideshow. So first of all, we're going to go over how the situations when you're going to use an array versus when you're going to use multiple variables. So when you're using an array, you should be using it for if you have one type of data that you are looking to have multiple entries for, and you might need to add more. So let's say you were trying to get the list of prices of all the houses in an area. So maybe you want to obtain the average, so you just have that information in a list. Then you should be using an array. But you should be using multiple variables when you were listing a general type of information. So let's say I have a house and I want to say number of square feet of the house, the address, the price of the house, and the color of the house. You're going to want to use multiple variables for this because this all includes different types of data, but it's all under a general type. So that's when you're going to use multiple variables. So when you're defining a one-dimensional array, it's nothing too crazy. You're basically just going to have the data type, and then whatever you want the array name to be, and then you're going to have the little square brackets right here, and then that's how you're defining it. And when you want to initialize it, you're gonna have equals and then new in that same data type, and then this pound sign right here. That's how many elements you're gonna have in this array. The actual indexing starts at 0 when you are trying to use the array, but this pound sign is just for how many elements you want to have. Now, when you're dividing or defining 2D arrays, you kind of think of it as an array of arrays. So we have a data type and then array name, whatever you want to name it, and then two square brackets, and that's the definition, and then equals new and that same data type. And then you can think of it as a row or a number of rows and a number of columns. So if I want to have 5 rows and 2 columns, then I will have 5 rows, 5 rows and then 2 columns. And that will hold data. It's kind of like an array of arrays. So a conceptual example of a 2D array. Now, right here, how I have the equals sign on the bottom and no colon or anything, I'm not actually writing it in code. This is just kind of to gain that conceptual understanding. So as we know, when you define a variable as an integer, its value that it starts out automatically is just 0. So I'm just initializing one right now, int 2D array with my double brackets, and then equals new int, and I'm going to have 3 rows and 4 columns. So you can imagine this as an array of arrays. So this is what it's going to look like in the actual data. It's just going to be the outside brackets. So there's one right here, and then this array, which has 4 elements, and there's going to be 3 of these. So we can have 3 rows and then 4 columns in each row. Now, this is an example of using an array as a parameter and returning an array. So I just used it from our lab that we did, and this is basically just the swap. So pretty much what you're doing in this method is you are taking an array and then you're entering an index of an array. So if I want to do the first element, then I would put an index as 0 because that is technically the first element that is in the array. And then basically you can make modifications to all the elements in it. So I have the temporary placeholder, and then I'm assigning the array at or the index or the element at that index to the temporary element or to the temporary value. And then I am replacing the indexed value with the element that is or the next element in the array, which is what the swap method is supposed to do. And then I have that temporary value from up here, and then I put that in the element that is one above whatever this index is. And you can just return the name of the array. You don't need to do anything with brackets. You just actually return the variable or the array name. Now, if I'm processing 1D arrays, right here, I just made this kind of makeshift little classroom. And let's say this classroom is really small. It just has 5 students. So I'm going to initialize my strings or my array of strings. So I have string classroom equals new string, and then I want to have 5 elements in it. But as you see here, I only have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is because the indexing starts at 0. So I have the first student named Bob, and then Joe, and then Billy, Sally, and Bridget. And then this, I just made a simple for loop to print out the name of each student in the class. And as you can see, the counter starts at 0. So then it's going to start at Bob. And yes, it does start at Bob. And then it goes up 1 right here. And then it goes to Joe, Billy, Sally, and Bridget. So it matches up perfectly. Now, I also have another example in terms of 2D arrays for a classroom. This is actually in my Eclipse right now. So basically, I made this example when I was in my geometry class in middle school. Basically, my teacher had it where our whole class, it almost looked like a coordinate, and each desk had its own little, or it almost looked like a graph, and each desk had its own little coordinate. So you can kind of think of this, if we're doing a classroom, like a little coordinate or like a little graph. So right here, I actually made a new class called the student class, which is right here. And each student has a grade and a name. And so let's say I have a 2D array, and it's a classroom, and you want to find out the student at 0, 0. Well, if you want to print that, then you can just do system.out.println classroom, which is my array name, and then the row and the column that you want to go in. So as you can see right here, I have a array that basically, if we can see, there's 2 brackets right here, 1, 2. So this bracket right here, it actually lines up with so this one right here lines up right here, as we can see. So all these students, so Ryan, Sam, Kelly, David, and Fred, they're all in this first row. There's 5 students in this first row. And then Alex, Rachel, Matt, Anna, and Noah, they're in that second row, and there's also 5 students in that one. And in the initialization of the students, we have a constructor, and the name is Ryan, and his grade is 88.5. So let's say I want to print out all of the students' names in the class with their grades. I just made a for loop. So basically, I have an outer for loop, which has the row, and then I have an inner for loop that has the columns. As we can see, we have 2 rows. So since the indexing starts at 0, it should only be 0 and 1. And we have 5 columns, so there should be 5 right here. So the index should be from 0 to 4. Now, let's say I want to run this. We can see in the console right here, this prints out all the students. So at 0, 0, the first one, the for loop, this prints out this student is named Ryan, and they have an 88.5% in the class. And then 0, 1, when this for loop updates, now we have this student is named Sam, and they have a 91.3 in the class. This whole program is just utilizing a 2D array and then going through each element in the array and kind of demonstrating how it works. That's all I have for arrays. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.